Good evening, it's Joyful Christian Mystic Hermit. I'm finally getting to some nitty-gritty, and I think it's important to know. I am a Catholic. I'm remembering back when I made my prayer vow of always being obedient and doing, following the Catholic Church and all. And it's, at the time, I even remember some of the things that I was repeating, read it, and it's what everyone repeats when they become a Catholic. I think something to be faithful to the magisterium, and because Jesus had already told me that it pleased him very much for me to be Catholic, that he wanted that. I knew God had called me into the Catholic Church. Even so, within myself, I said, but Lord, only if you approve. But there's nothing that I have ever been told or that is part of the dogma, theology, or whatever that says you must, unless it is something that I have gone along with, that I believe or understand. And that includes this aspect, although I don't like the word. My mother didn't like the word purgatory, which sort of made me laugh a little bit inside. She didn't like it because it was connected with Catholicism. I just don't like it. I don't think it describes adequately what happens when we die. It's more a progression, and it's glorious. It's not, purgatory has such a negative connotation with it. It's been created or interpreted that way in earlier centuries. And so I think these realities of just some history of it are good to know. It's always good to know what we belong to, and what the church says and what it doesn't really say. And I believe in praying for people who have died. Not that I think they're in dire trouble, or that they are in some horrible burning situation that they need to be freed from, like prison or something. I know that was not my experience at all. But if someone asks me to pray for them before they die, I would. And I pray for people who have died out of love, because I love them. So I pray for my parents. I pray for other people because I love them. I pray out of love. So that's my reason for praying for those who have died. And it's not because I'm going to save them or rescue them, because God takes care of us. And even, in Scripture, the thief on the cross, the good thief, they called him, the one that recognized Christ. What Jesus told him, you will be in paradise with me this very day. So we have an idea from Jesus what happens with someone who believes in God. And God said, you will be with me in paradise. I think paradise is a lovely word to describe where we are when we die, or at least initially, or can be, based on our belief in God and our love of God, love of Christ. And but I think it's lovely to pray for people. And so I've been praying for people who die. I've been praying for people who are in danger, who have been in crimes and might be dead even. I pray for them. I pray for loved ones. I pray for people who I know are in heaven. I talk with them out of love, communicating, how are you? please look out for me or something, here on earth. Help me to understand anything I need to be doing in my life. Like I've been talking to my mom and dad, thanking them for my childhood and for all the good, and asking my dad to forgive me. I've asked him to forgive me for my not listening to him, and my mom too, not taking time, not being patient. I've asked forgiveness for any thoughts that I've had of blaming or just anything. Lately I've been on that of wanting them to know how much I appreciate them and can't wait to see them again in eternity. Thanks for all the wonderful things they've done for me, for forgiving me for my own flaws as a daughter. I've prayed to my grandmother, talked to her, asking her to help me after my husband left. And it was the fall that the divorce became final. And I just gotten into a little house, and my back was killing me. It was so bad. And my children, and I would call out at night, Grandma, Grandma, help me, help me. Tell me how I'm going to manage. How am I going to rear my children? Because you reared 8. Your husband died, You can help me. And she did. She appeared like at 3 a.m, stood by my bed and helped me and told me things, So told me I would need to learn to hibernate like a bear for protection from the world. Later she came and said, I've come to give you the beginning of wisdoms. The beginnings of wisdom, she put it. And I stood, and she walked over to me, and she placed this sort of a box-shaped kind of a thing that she just put right into my heart, right into my center. And she said, this is the beginning of wisdom for you. It's a gift from God. And I couldn't tell anything had happened to me after. And then she dissipated with this beautiful scent of perfume. But I knew my grandmother had brought me something very special from God, and that she was helping me. She would help me with my children and with my life. I didn't get it right totally. It's hard to know exactly what she meant by hibernate like a bear, even though she had me look down. And my whole body had turned into white polar bear fur, and my hands had turned into polar bear paws. And Grandma told me that when matters got very painful, to use my hand and press into the center of my palms like this, or I don't know if you can see, like this, like to press. She went like this and showed me how to press into the center. And to me, and it was before she left, that I had the idea that great suffering was going to come, because she said when the pain gets terrible, do this. But I connected it with Christ and his wounds on his hand. It was right in the center of my palm. And other people have told me, who are more in with non-Christian beliefs and things and chakra systems, which they're different areas of the body that energy is, or comes out or comes in or something. I'm going to research it because I'm fuzzy on it, but I'm not in that culture. So my association with the wounds of Christ was effective. It was a connection that later on, after I'd had the back surgery and I lost my career, that I was in so much pain because I had died and all. And then especially when I became Catholic, and I was told a month before I actually had my confirmation as a Catholic and had my first communion, which I loved. that I connected that, that my sufferings and the sufferings of the Catholic Church, of Christ's Church, would be made one. That I was, that my sufferings had a purpose and a reason to God, a utilization in God's view and in his purpose for his church. So, and it's a good reminder for me. And I would press here, it didn't really much affect my bodily pain, but it did remind me to connect my sufferings with Christ, and that gave me a spiritual strength to get through the sufferings. And it also reminded me of my grandmother and her strength of having a husband die suddenly about a week before the market crash. He was part owner of a restaurant in this small town, but it was a big restaurant. It was an important restaurant in the town at the time. And he had also just gotten elected as a councilman for the town. And so he was getting into politics, and he had built them a home that was paid for. So she had a place to live, but she had 8 children, ages 18 to 4. And it was, my mother remembers her mother in bed crying a lot. That's what she remembered of it. And that her mother was exhausted, just absolutely exhausted. Growing up, that's my mother was 9 at the time, and just how hard it was for everyone to get through. And so I understood a lot about my mother from that, and she found it very important to have social standing and to have financial security. And she liked to be in the clubs, and she was an organizer. So, and she was found it very important to her that we played with the right people and made a contribution in the world. And so us being teachers was fine with her too, but being married to someone who could provide well was important to her, because she knew what had happened, and what could happen. And she was upset that I was marrying a teacher because they don't make much money. And she didn't know him either. She talked to my aunt, and my aunt lied. In a way, she said how she knew my husband's family, and she had told me this too, knew them well, and they were wonderful people. Well, they had no friends. My ex-husband's parents had no friends. His dad was a gnarly, nasty kind of a person who would turn off people. He was not nice. Even to his own, he had a grandson who was about 10 at the time, wasn't nice to him, would threaten him, he had this little boy, maybe he was 8 at the time, or, well, maybe even younger, but I remember him more around 10, but probably when we were first married, he might have even been 5 years old or 6. He had a little tinker toy that he built into a lawnmower and was playing in the backyard, and they had a pool. My ex's parents had a pool. And the grandfather, this little boy, said, "If you get any of those into that pool, I'm throwing you in after it, and I'm not going to come in and rescue you." Just nasty threat. And the little boy was scared, and he stopped playing. He took his tinker toy inside, and he was over on the grass. I mean, for pity's sakes, that was stunning. I was already married, but it was, and the first time I met his mother, I realized she wasn't at all like my mom or dad. And and my ex had said, how they went to church and stuff. And no, they did not. I found out later they didn't go to church. They weren't church people. They weren't praying before meals or have that kind of they were moral people as far as were married to each other, and she was loyal to this man, but how on earth, I don't know. But on another level of him, though, he had good intentions. But I don't know what happened in his life to cause him to be so gnarly. And he'd say nasty things, and he resented school teachers. And he would make comments about how, well, you have summers. We didn't get paid in the summer. You just work for free. You get all this money and you aren't even working all summer. And he was an electrician. I have to work all the time. And, he was very, very ugly sounding, person. So you just never know. But see, someone like that, he passed away. I think he had a heart attack. My kids told me that their grandfather had died. But I prayed for him. I didn't know where he was in the next world at all, in eternity. But I hoped for the best for him because I realized that something in him caused him just to be an irritable, negative, nasty person. And my husband had grown up with that. But my husband made up these big stories about how they used to fight, his parents. And his sister, who I trusted, said, oh, no, they weren't like that. But she said, my dad isn't a nice person. And he can be very, very nasty sounding. But that he didn't act on it. He didn't actually do, like he wouldn't have thrown that boy in the pool. And when there was a fire up in the foothills in a home that we had, near a home that we had, not close enough to be worried about, but he tore up in his car and got out, had a hose and was hosing the roof. He was worried it would burn down. I mean, he cared. He just had a way about him that turned people off. But no, my aunt didn't really know them. And later she complained that she saw them. She and my uncle saw them out eating and went over to say hi, and they were very rude to them. So she didn't know what they were really like. But my aunt thought of herself as a matchmaker and thought, oh, how great, I'm going to get my niece married off. Because she had invited him to this party that, because I didn't have a date or something. And my mother really let her have it after the divorce, got into it with her sister. And I told my mom, don't, it's not worth it. It's not her fault, really. I mean, she did it with another cousin, matched with somebody that she thought she knew, and that ended in a divorce too. So, and that cousin was so sweet. He ended up remarrying. It was a male cousin who was in the military who visited her when he was on leave, and she fixed him up, and my aunt was a character, but he said, well, to me after he said, Aunt Irma didn't do very well with her matchmaking, did she? I said, no, she didn't. But you have to move on and forgive, love, pray, love, forgive, and then live your life. But when the people die who we don't know, I'm sure I said some prayers for Wendell. And I insisted with my husband at one point. His grandparents lived up in Washington State. I had never met them. And they were his mother's parents. They had never come down to visit. And I thought, oh, they'd love to meet their little great-granddaughters. And we had the money then. We had this nursery schoolhouse. We were making money. I talked my husband into it. I said, let's buy them tickets and fly them down here to visit. And they ended up spending, I thought they would spend time with us. But his mother wanted them there with them. They didn't contribute at all toward the plane tickets, but I let that go. But they did meet the little granddaughters, and she went with me, wanted to buy an outfit for the girls, and I took them to this store where I like to shop, And my mother-in-law always disliked me. And she got back, she volunteered at a thrift store. So the great-grandmother bought these 2 little cute sundresses because they were on sale, but they were in a nice store. But the grandmother, my daughter's grandmother, my husband's mother, gave them dresses for Christmas from the thrift shop. Still had food on them. They were crummy dresses that hadn't even been laundered, that were given to the thrift store. Well, that's okay. I always gave nice clothes to the thrift store. Poor people don't want awful clothes with food on them. And the mother knew that we dressed our children in nice clothing. And that was sort of her little get back. They were 2 and 4 years old. They wanted toys. But they got these. And my husband noticed. I mean, he didn't like it. But I said, don't say anything. And I said, I'll wash them and give them back to a thrift shop when the girls outgrow their clothes. But she resented, that her mother had bought these nice, I'd taken her to the store where I shopped. And it wasn't an outrageously costly place, but little children like to look cute and get compliments too, so, and we could afford it. We could afford for them not to wear, and just the fact that it had food on it was just sort of gross. It was dirty dresses. So that's the kind of thing. She has passed away, and she never had anything nice to say. She resented me from the get-go. And but I always tried to be very kind with her. And Christian, I was reared a Christian. I mean, he tried to live the Bible. So, and treat people like that. But I've thought of her, and mostly I just wish her well, wherever she is. I would assume by now, I mean, she wasn't, these are venial sins I'm talking about. Little gotcha things that she would try to do, resentments, and put downs and things. Like after the divorce, or after he left, or something, she wrote to my mother and said how sorry she feels for Steve. That was my ex's name. For Steve, because he has to change their diapers when they visit him. Change the baby's diaper. He was barely 2, and my mother wrote back, and maybe my dad too. My dad sent me. Oh no, my ex wrote to my dad, and my dad wrote back to him, and laid it out straight. But gentleman though, a gentleman all the way. But my mother wrote back and said, I feel sorry for my daughter. She's injured, and she has to do it all the time, take care of all children on very little money, most of the time skipped child support. Or at that time, I don't even think he was paying anything. I hadn't even got to court. It took so long to get to court to even get enforced child support. When I got it, he would skip it, knowing not all the time, but off and on, or not pay the full amount. So because he knew it was backlogged, and it was impossible for me. I filed claims, but it never got even to handled by the California court system. But once he moved out of state, then immediately I got the wages garnished. But by then I had just one child left with a little bit of child support, at like $300 a month. So it was just, but see, so where are these people? I don't know if they are in progression still. Even the mean-spirited, against my wishes, my husband wanted them to stay with his parents for 3 days when he took me to Hawaii sort of on a last-ditch effort to see if he was going to keep me, I think it was. It was about 4 months before he left for good. And offered to have my sister and her husband come along, trying to be nice. I think he was trying to be nice. And, but he was so mean to me during the trip. But I didn't want the children staying with them because I didn't trust the mother to keep a good eye. And the grandfather, I didn't trust at all to be kind. And but my ex and my husband at the time, he says, and then my parents were coming over. They were going to come for the whole week to watch him. But I get back, and my mother, they'd picked the children up and brought them to where we lived in Pacific Palisades, my parents had. And she says, you need to be prepared. There was an accident. And my eldest girl had a big gash in her forehead. Well, he had taken them golfing, which was nice. They lived on a golf course. They lived in a mobile home somewhere in a retirement area in Southern California. But she'd gotten too close, or my other daughter had gotten too close. Yeah, she'd gotten too close. The other daughter swung and hit her sister in the forehead by accident. Felt terrible. And my little girl told me, Mommy, Grandpa yelled at me and said I couldn't cry, that I had to stop your crying. She needed to have stitches. They never took her to a doctor. She has a big scar on her forehead to this day. Well, it's not terrible, but it's nothing she ever wanted and never deserved. I mean, it's noticeable. And my mother said she needed stitches, and of course it was too late. So they'd gotten her some of these, butterfly bandages trying to help, but my parents got on it too late. Arrived. It happened like the first day, and that did it with me. I said, never again will they ever be staying there. But I had no control over it once it was divorced. But my eldest daughter, she I don't think they ever did go, because they knew they could refuse. That she was old enough then to, by the time the divorce got filed and the enforced visitations and stuff. So, but just stuff like that, it just mean, and didn't know how to. So I did think, well, how did he treat his own kids? Not well, and that's part of it. And his sister later told me, well, he's just like his dad, about her brother, my husband, ex. And she was very sweet. His brother's a minister, Presbyterian minister. He was very good person. So just, one of these bad persons made bad choices for himself and is a habitual liar, and was, and still is. That's part of the problem with my son. Something had happened regarding my grandson, and I knew a lot of lies were going on to try to put the blame onto my grandson or make up stuff that were nasty about my grandson. And it wasn't true. So, and about my daughter even, the boy's mother lied about something about that. So, and my son by that time, though, was so taken in by his dad that he cut off relationship with me for pointing out the truth. And for telling the truth. So, that's, where do people like that go after they die? Well, I think they definitely need some growth, some lessons in love, and they never apologized to us, never made amends for anything. So and just the fact that the mother would write and put this on my mother, that poor Steve has to change his diapers every other weekend. Well, if he even took them on the weekends, sometimes they didn't go. Sometimes my older kids refused to go, and the lawyer said, with your bad back, you can't be expected to pull a 8-year-old and a 6-year-old and force them into a car. And they would literally hide behind the sofa, squeeze in behind the sofa when he'd come. But he would take the little guy at times. Other times not. He would change his mind, and well, he had other plans and would show up. And that was all. They always rejoiced with that. The kids did, because they never wanted to go until he remarried, and that woman had 3 kids. And before, when they were living together too, she had kids about their age, and it made it more fun for them. Then they would go, and he would get rid of them by putting them in fun camps and send them off places. So the kids, so they all had a good time. That's when they would go without fussing, and I didn't blame them. It was, what did they have at home? A mom in pain, and we were so strapped I couldn't provide fun stuff for them like that. So that all worked out fine, and I didn't mind at all. I didn't worry about them because they were older and they had these other kids and the woman there. But the woman didn't protect her own son. That's another story. So where do people like these go when they die? I think there has to be some means of helping them, but I can't imagine that they would immediately be in bliss with behaviors and lies and wrongdoings. Without remorse. So maybe in their judgment when they meet with God, because everybody meets with God. I met with God, but it wasn't for judgment. He wanted me back rearing my children, and I'm thankful he did. I'm thankful he reminded me I had children. It was so glorious. So it was the right thing. I'm sorry that I loved where I was so much, and I didn't even know I was going to be in a body of pain. It's good that God knew not to tell me I would go back into suffering, a life of suffering. Because I probably would, isn't that horrible? So I was that selfish and loved where I was that much. I had died and gone to heaven. When people say that, oh, I've died and gone to heaven. I mean, truly, for me to turn my sights away from my sweet children, knowing what kind of a person their dad was. But it did take seeing him to make me realize, and then I couldn't say, no, I want to go on. I could not say that. But I still couldn't say I would go back, because heaven is powerful. So I don't know. I guess that's why I'm, Sophia mentioning this. Maybe it is. Maybe there is no progression. Maybe people like these in-laws I had just were immediately in bliss and heaven and had their judgment, were totally forgiven. Maybe then they said, oh, I'm so sorry. But it seems like their soul wouldn't be very developed. It wasn't on earth they didn't have developed souls of love, of a deep level of love, or an understanding of love, what it is to be loving. They were rather vindictive, envious types, resented that we were industrious, that I would fix up houses and then we'd sell and move up and make money on it. And I don't think they ever came to see us when we lived in Pacific Palisades. My mom and dad enjoyed going there, seeing the sights around the ocean, and they enjoyed it. And we went up the coast to visit. Oh no, that was a different trip though. But my ex, when I was married to him, he really would put on a show when my parents would come. And it was nice. We would take a trip with them and take them up to see some of the relatives on my dad's side who lived out in California on the coast further up in Cambria and stuff. But my husband, he liked to travel. So, and he wanted to show what a great guy he was. He would do that with people, which it was pleasant for me because it gave me that good side of him. I just didn't put it together that he had a real serious Jekyll Hyde problem, that he had this series of disorders called personality disorders, sociopath. So here's what the church says: the practice of but you see why we would stop to wonder. I do. That surely there's some means that God uses to teach people who don't learn it on earth. I would think, out of his love for us, that he has them in some kind of a sphere or a progression of learning love so that they could become purified, pure love, and then have union with God. I'm hoping both my former in-laws are in union with God now. I want everyone to be in union with God for eternity. Sadly, some are in hell. They reject. Even with their judgment, they still reject. They don't cooperate. They don't admit that they did wrong. And they put themselves in a hell of their own just deserts, because they're given chance after chance on earth and then when they die. So, the practice of praying for the dead is rooted in the belief that they can be helped in a state of final purification. It originated in pre-Christian Jewish tradition, notably seen in 2 Maccabees, 1241-46. That's about 100 BC. And was adopted by early Christians. While the doctrine developed over centuries, early Christians were offering prayers for the deceased by the 200s AD. So, scriptural roots in 2 Maccabees. Judas Maccabeus provides sacrifices for fallen soldiers, indicating a belief that prayers help souls atone for sins. So that's where it came from, this thought from Judaism. And early church, 2nd and 3rd century, including Tertullian, who died in 230 AD, mentioned prayers for the dead, a practice evident in early Roman catacomb inscriptions. Development of the doctrine. Church fathers like St. Augustine and St. Gregory the Great, 590 to 604 AD, later solidified, in this time period they developed this, later solidified the idea of a purifying fire or state. I'd call it a progression, although the formal term purgatory was not used widely until the 12th century. Formalization, and they used probably the purifying fire, because in those days they used fire to purify gold, to get gold melted and things out, and get the impurities out of gold, to come up with a pure gold or other metals that they could melt. And so that was the idea of purifying, getting the sins out of us. And there's other means, like taking the positive approach of teaching and of people learning how to progress and how to do something well, to learn. So, Formalization, Church officially recognized that souls in purgatory or progression are assisted by the prayers of the living at the Council of Lyon, 1274, later reaffirmed at the Councils of Florence and Trent. The practice is closely tied to the doctrine of the communion of saints, where the living can aid those undergoing purification. Jewish roots, already mentioned that. Early Christian evidence, prayer for the dead was common in the early church by 2nd century. They have an epitaph of Abercius in 190 AD, which explicitly asks readers to pray for him. Early church fathers, around 211 AD, Tertullian became the first Christian writer to mention anniversary masses for the dead as an established custom. It's just a custom. Later, St. Augustine in the 4th and 5th century affirmed that the souls of the dead are benefited by the prayers of the living. Now, how Augustine knows this, I don't know, but that is a custom. It's a custom. It was not a rule, a custom, something that you could choose to do or believe or not. Development of the doctrine in medieval formalization, while the idea was ancient, this of purgatory, the specific noun, and its description as a physical place rather than just a state of being, did not appear until the late 12th century. I'm back with the early Christians in the Judaism, the Judaistic belief that it is a state of being. That's what I believe. It's a state of being, or a sphere, a realm in which our soul learns and grows and becomes more filled with love, and ceases the sins of ugliness and hate and anger and envy and all of the vices that can take love and just crumple it up or squeeze the life out of it. I was just reading about a young woman who was murdered, raped and murdered, abducted, raped and murdered, and just the horror she went through. And 911 let her down. This was back in 2008. So, just the evil that can be in people. That man's on death row, but where will his soul be? It's an interesting, not more than interesting, because I want my soul filled with love, and I don't want my flashbacks to be squeezing the life out of my love. I want to be able to love the person that caused me pain in life. I have forgiven the kid who hit me. He never said sorry. The judge even said he will never show remorse. I couldn't even be in court. I had lawyers that were taking advantage of me. So I got very, very little. It was worth a lot, my life was. And I got sold down the river by my own lawyers. Got ripped. And the kid wasn't even arrested. I mean, a lot went bad from bad people. But not killers. But sinners. And where are their souls? What happens to these people? So we have the description as a physical place comes along in the 12th century and called purgatory then. Keep on going here. Two more. Now, here it is. Catholics are required to believe in the dogma of purgatory as a final purification for those who die in God's grace, but are not yet perfected. But we aren't required to use the term purgatory, just the concept that there is a final purification for those who die in God's grace, but are not yet perfected. That's it. We're not required to pray for them, just to understand that there is a final purification process for those souls that did not die, who died in God's grace, who believed in God, but were not yet in pure love. In other words, purified with pure love, by lives that exemplified that, with various proofs of unusual gifts from God that those who are loving have, including like the esteem of their family members, for example, or of others who would say, well, not perfect, but loved God, tried, did their best, suffered as best they could, if they had suffering, or took care of us as best they could, worked hard, obeyed laws, went to church, prayed, those kind, but weren't perfect. They weren't in the state of a saint. They weren't like a canonized saint with all kinds of mystical graces. But I don't think we should even put a lot of store in that, because even Padre Pio, he was impatient. He would get grumpy. I never blamed him. All that pain he was in and exhausted, and having to know all these awful things about people who would try to lie about it to him, that would make me a little bit ticked off. So, so maybe he had a little purification he had to have. We don't know. It's really not our business. So, to be having to make these judgment calls. But we can assume based on ourselves. Any of you without sin, Jesus said, can throw the first stone. So, hey, I've got sin. So, I messed up again today with triggers. So see, so it's a defined doctrine, but specific assumptions about which souls are there rather than in heaven are not mandated at all. Instead, the church encourages praying for all deceased, what they say deceased souls. That's an inaccuracy. Souls aren't dead. Praying for all deceased persons. Souls live. They're eternal. So, key points regarding this requirement of the doctrine, or the idea, the notion, is dogma versus private opinion. The church teaches purgatory is a necessary purification before entering heaven. However, Catholics are not bound to specific, unauthorized private revelations about the state of particular souls. So, like, I happen to know, I was shown that my mom and dad were yet in a process, not yet purified, just by what I was shown. No one has to believe that of me or of them. It was private. It was shown me on 2 occasions with my mom and 2 with my dad. And then heaven, shown when they went to heaven. And 1 time with my dad, since he was in heaven. And my mother, I think once, not sure if she was on her way or if she was already, but I didn't see her angel with her. So, and I'm not even 100% sure she had light. I mean, maybe the devil was tricking me. I don't know for sure, but that was the indication I had. And she was able to call my aunt. So, that was quite fantastic that she had all that ability if she wasn't purified. I would say that would be something that to be able to speak and utilize a temporal phone to contact her sister, to alert her that I needed prayers, that I was in bad way with pain. That would take a soul that had a lot of capabilities, miraculous capabilities, which I would think a lot of being purified and being very love, filled with love, having pure love, would allow for that. The communion of saints. The Church encourages praying for the dead, as this practice is believed to aid in their journey to heaven. Oh, that's fine. Encourages, Final judgment. While the Church formally canonizes individuals, declaring them saints in heaven, it does not definitively declare that a specific individual is in purgatory or hell. Well, that's smart, because we're not to judge. And we can celebrate, but I've been shown how to tell if a soul is in heaven, but I'm not shown very often. I never ask. I don't ask. If God wants to show me something, he will. I'm not gonna put it upon. I don't have to know. Like I say, it's really not my business. But I pray for people who are not on this earth anyway, and I talk with them. Whether or not they answer back, I don't care. But I carry on conversations, loving conversations with them, like I would if I were on a phone with them or writing them a letter. I've talked with my friend Mary. I've never heard anything. I've never been shown anything of her. I have no idea. And people in the town would go around saying that she was a saint. I don't know if she was or not. But she was very dedicated to the temporal Catholic world and the rules of the temporal Catholic world. And I did note and mention that when I was being shunned, she went along with the shunners rather than bucking them. But a woman that I had babysat for her children, she drove to my home the next morning after those awful weekend masses. And how are you? And this is terrible. And she became my only friend who kept talking with me and checking on me and wanting to do things with me. And she says, she would not go along with any shunning. And that made a big impression on me with her. So that's all I know, is that she was not that temporalized, that she didn't know Christianity well and lived it, no matter what the local church was doing and thought was okay to do, to shun someone. Archaic a little bit, is it not? A little bit like the Boston, when they would do to the Scarlet Letter kind of situation, and they would drown the witches, and if they drowned, they truly were okay, and if they survived, they'd burn them, because that meant that they were really witches. They would get them one way or another, people that were mystics even. So final judgment, let's see, we had that. So therefore Catholics were required to accept an existence of purgatory, or whatever, a state of being, of learning or evolving, being purified, being a state of being purified, but are not required to assume or believe specific unauthorized claims about the location of individual souls, and not required to pray for them. But who would? Why wouldn't we? I mean, like I say, pray for everyone. It's a good thing to do. Even the ones in heaven, why not pray for them? And ask them to pray for us. Or see, to me, prayer is communication. So I like to do that. I like to keep in touch and thank people and remember things they did in life. Some people who came back and reported things said that that was very, and or had contact even, like with a deceased child who would come to them in dreams and stuff. They would say, "Stop crying for me. It makes me happy when you are laughing and remembering fun things, times that we were all laughing, things that I did that made you laugh, good memories. That's what makes me happy where I am." So, see, that's good to know from people who had lost children, who the children would come in a dream or speak to them in some way from the other side and say, no more of the tears and the sorrowing. It just only makes us more sad. And we're fine. We're doing great. It's wonderful. So, I remember that. That's why I remember fun things and wonderful things. And even with my aunt, the matchmaker, she knows I've forgiven her. I never blamed her. She had a party. She set it up. She encouraged it. At one point, it was going to break up. I caught him in a lie, and he flipped out when I caught him in it. Before we were married, and she patched it up. I let her patch it up, though. You often have these kinds of tiffs. It's the emotions of the wedding coming up. But I also, myself, thought, my mother's sending out the invitations, and, this is just one thing, and everybody has something, But otherwise, I wouldn't have patched it up because I don't like lying. But I learned to get along because he would get so awful and scary. So that's how he exerted control over me. I was abducted in my marriage, in essence, and did what my captor wanted for the most part. But hung in because of the vows, my religious beliefs, which I was sort of dumb and naive. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten, frankly. You get used to a certain bad, and you don't realize. And at one point, when it was bad, and my mother even said, "We stuck it out for you children, now stick it out," And later she called me, within a couple hours. "I'm so sorry." I said that I'm so sorry. She says, "I know what you're going through, and it is bad, I don't blame you." We were separated then, and she thought, try again, I had visited them with the 3 little children, and she just saw what kind of a hard life I was going to have. My back was terrible, etc., etc. I hadn't died yet because I couldn't travel after that. But so, okay. So that, but the church does not claim to know the exact state of any individual soul at the moment of death, except for those officially canonized as saints. I think that's sort of iffy ground there to even assume that. But they show such gifts and things that I just think they shouldn't have canonization so specific and have it be a thing. Just declare anyone wonderful as a holy person or a saint and let it go at that. Not go through all this big rigmarole that makes it so important that they put themselves on the line to make a statement that this person definitely is in this in heaven, because what I'm shown, maybe someone else has a slightly different view. So it's just you'd never get me away from what I experienced, and and also even when I'm shown souls and where they are. I would never, ever back away. Other than my mother, every now and then I wonder, was that sign a big enough sign for me? But I never asked God to prove it to me at all. Because like I say, but I think it was the sign. She seemed so at peace and happy, and all the light around her. I mean, I guess what did I want? That was pretty much how my dad was, except my dad had his angel beside him. Because that was a big signal. So it was, and they were heading toward a representation of heaven. And then when my dad came and talked with me in person, face to face, and gave me messages that came true, so that was good. That was a sign that he was in a state of pure love and had the graces that God gives of those who are in union with him, in union with God, so that they can know God's will. If they are one with God. They're not God, but they know. They are privy. Instruction to pray. Because the church cannot be certain of a person's immediate readiness of God, it strongly urges the faithful to pray and offer masses for the dead. Well, that's a lovely thing to do. It doesn't say how to pray or in whatever, or that you must, but it urges, strongly urges. But it's not required, and that's good to know, I think, because it gives us the freedom, and it's a good sign for ourselves. Are we a loving person? Will we pray for someone where we don't know what the disposition of their soul is right now? I do, but I don't necessarily pray in a formula prayer, but I pray loving thoughts, loving wishes. I've been asking Heavenly Pearl, how do you want me to pray for you? What prayer needs do you have? Let me know if there's anything in particular I should pray for you. But I'm praying just in general, that if she's not already purified and one with God, that she's enjoying what she's learning of love and coming along well with the progress. I'm sure she is. She just seems like a delightful human being, and probably a very eager, alert, with it, open-souled student. So, and I'd be surprised if she isn't one with God now, because it's a timeless state. So what could be 40 minutes of my being dead seemed like, or 20, between 24, there were two different time frames, but seemed like just 3 minutes to me, or 5 minutes maybe. So, but I was moving fast through the universe. I could tell that, but it was effortless. So the purpose of these traditions, this is good to know, because I have found as a Catholic, they always have good reasons for things. It's not willy-nilly. Church leaders want us to consider that a soul may need purification for several reasons. Scriptural basis. Passages such as 2 Maccabees 12:46 teach that it is a holy and pious thought to pray for the dead so they may be loosed from their sins. Act of charity. Praying for someone in purgatory, or as I say, progression, or on the other side in general, is considered a spiritual work of mercy. So I think that's a lovely thing. If we're praying for friends and family and strangers on earth, why not pray for them in eternity too? What harm? I mean, why not? It's love. And that's why I'm doing this also, is because it's teaching me another aspect, another facet of pure love, is to not limit my prayer to any one particular type of thought of a person that I have. Doesn't have to be someone that I'm judging needs help. It could be, I can pray for Padre Pio. I can pray for Mother Teresa or Teresa of Avila. Pray that she's having wonderful success with what God's utilizing for her in eternity. I can thank her for all the good that she wrote and ask her to help me, to live out some of the more spiritual aspects of what she wrote, such as how I can come into pure love. It's probably maybe the seventh castle or something of her book, The Interior Castles. Active charity. I mean, I can pray for the devil that he stop. Give it up. Pray for the person who's holding the 84-year-old woman. Give it up. Stop this evil. Stop misbehaving. Why not? If I'm supposed to love his soul. This evil person who's kidnapped this 84-year-old woman and wants a lot of money, which they're going to pay now, out of love for their mother. Active charity. Praying for someone in purgatory, I'm going to say anywhere, in progression, in heaven, anywhere, is a spiritual work of mercy. If the soul is already in heaven, the prayers are not wasted, but are applied to other souls in need. And maybe applied to the works they're doing. We're not just in heaven singing with the angels. The angels aren't just up there. There's a certain choir that's singing, praising God. But we'll have missions. We'll have purpose in heaven. We're not going to just be, looking at each other. What did they used to say when I was growing up? Stop staring at your navel or something. No, they're going to be busy doing good work. Help. Maybe praying, maybe interacting on earth, teaching the souls that come there. Like my mother, she was going to be teaching. Lovey, it's okay, I'm coming. So pray for all. Pray for all. And if God uses the prayers that we pray for those in heaven, for those in need, great. God can use our prayers however he wants. The big thing is to pray. Pray with love. And I'm trying to pray without judgment. Of thinking, my in-laws, they might be in trouble. I got to pray for them, or panic, or somebody that I, care about, and pray. They're suffering. They're in fire. No, I know they're not, but I can't convince anyone else of that. So, that it's a beautiful process of growth. What wouldn't be wonderful about becoming more loving and learning more about love? It's great. I'm loving it on earth, learning more about love. So those are the summaries. The only thing mandatory, and it came from the Council of Trent, is the belief of its existence, of this sphere, this level, this place, this being, this state of being. It's a pious practice, that's written in the Catechism, just assuming that a person may be there. It's just a practice. I stay away from it myself. I'm not going to assume, because it's a timeless place, and like I'm not assuming that Heavenly Pearl is there in any kind of state of progression. She may be in heaven, for all I know. And the CCC 1032 is just a recommendation of offering prayers and suffrages. So that's pretty much it. And there's this wonderful saint, Mel of Ardagh. So I'm going to talk about him sometime. He's the patron saint of single people. So, and it's a tradition that single people in Ireland would send a card to themselves, Happy Single Day, and it would express all the wonderful good things about being single. So I don't have a card for myself today, and I'm not getting one, but because I'm going to be busy praying love for people in eternity, no matter if they're in one state of progression or not. I'm just going to pray for people here. Pray for the dead, no matter where their rubber cone is going into the light. So that was an example that God gave me, an image God gave me to explain a concept to me. Doesn't mean that we're really rubber cones. So He uses images to teach us. So Sister Heavenly Pearl, she may be learning in some very loving way something that I'm yet to learn. So I'm going to ask her to share with me, if she doesn't mind, whatever she's learning. That would be of benefit, and thank her. And then also I'm praying for whatever she is learning, that it's leading her into being prepared for union with God. Or if she already is, let me know. I'm going to celebrate tonight that she's fully one with God, one with His love. And then I'll keep praying. So that's pretty much what it is. It's not that big of a deal. I'm very pleased it's not a big deal. The church doesn't really overstep itself. It's the people, though, the people in the church that hear these things and then temporalize it. And pretty soon then it becomes like, oh, you've got to. You better color Mary's cape red or blue instead of red. Those are the things that sort of just get made up by people along the way. So it's good to know what the church in the Council of Trent. I don't know what century that Council of Trent was, but that's when the dogma was set, way back. Well, let me see if I can look it up right now. I might have to just let you know later. I'll look up Council of Trent real fast here. And then, see, this puts it into context. Because things change. People's thoughts, maybe now there have been some saints or mystics who have had other information that is actually very valid. That's later on. Oh, I'm not getting turn on. Oh, here we go. 1545 and 1563. So that's the middle of the 1500s. So that's about 500 years ago. It's not. Might be time. Maybe they're going to be coming up with some change. I don't know. But that's where it got more solidified in the mid 1500s. Sort of puts it in context, though. I'm going to lighten up a little bit and trust God, number one, and pray for all who have died. I love that, to pray for those who have died. And I hope they're praying for me and for all of us. Oh, God bless His real presence in us. And pray with love. And I'm going to make sure I'm not trying to judge, to say, well, she's here or she's there, or I think she is. Other than my private revelations, one with my mom and dad, even so, I pray for them. I hope they had a good, whatever the unit of, if there's time in heaven, that my mom and dad are doing well and doing their work well. I'm praying the best for them and for my aunts and uncles, and can't wait to see them again. Be lovely. Much love to you, by the way. And I hope Sophia will help with, because I like, good minds that, and with experience and stuff that can help me grasp or open me up to some other aspect I hadn't thought about, and even ways to pray for everyone on the other side in eternity. Because that's a lot of praying, a lot of individual souls. But I do have the benefit of that vision with all the cones, just slowly, all in different places all over the universe, being drawn gently into the light, and they're involuting constantly, like metamorphosing, growing as they go. But that's my soul too. And I think it's after I die that maybe that was it. But even as we are alive, our souls are growing. And growing in love. Like today, realizing my flashback and all the stuff that it brought up to the surface for me to get rid of and to turn to love. So it's just great. It's great. And I'm glad to know this about the dogma in the Council of Trent and what it actually says. It's not as dictatorial as some people maybe think it is or thought it was. It's an urging to pray. It's not that we must, or just an encouragement. So that leaves it up to us. And if we're loving, of course we'll want to pray for people. Why not?